Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to our final bit of coverage here from MUFON Symposium 2023 in Covington, Kentucky. Our final guest is Dr. Michael P. Masters. He is the author of Identified Flying Objects, as well as Revelation, The Future Human Past, and my favorite title, The Extratempestrial Model, which is the one that I want to talk about, because for so long, even before Grush hit the scene, one of the things that I have been talking about for the longest time is if we keep the conversation of UFOs in the box of alien, we've done it no more justice than the scientists who've said, but it lives in this box.
Yeah.
And to dismiss the fact of, could it possibly be us from the future? Could it possibly be us from a parallel Earth? Could it possibly be us from a parallel dimension? There are numerous options. And to see the recent whistleblower hearings where they used the term non-human intelligence and really took it out of that box, it was fantastic to see the panoply be opened of possibilities.
Well, kind of. They sort of did the opposite, too, by calling it non-human intelligence. Cause,
yeah.
like I told you, it's a three-letter word to me. Because, yeah, they might be human.
They could be.
You know?
They could absolutely be us.
And if it was always my beef with the term extraterrestrial, too, because it pigeonholes the lexicon.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously people then think, well, it must be aliens. At least we've gotten away from that, you know. But, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of non-human intelligence. My friend Darren King, exo-academian, he calls them neo-humans.
Okay.
Or non-current humans. You know,
okay.
'cause I've come to understand that at least some of the phenomenon is, in fact, us from the future, you know.
Okay.
I don't think it explains all of it.
Sure.
It's highly variable. There's clearly a lot of other things going on, but some component of it is future humans. So, yeah, non-human intelligence, sure, it's a new buzzword, but
it, as you said, still it expands the box. But
it does.
It's still a box.
Yeah, no, it's good. The box is getting bigger.
Yeah.
Even if it's not, you know, the way or at the pace I would like to see it, but it is expanding.
Well, and there have definitely been stories of government experimentation with time travel, all kinds of things. So, where did you first start finding evidence of some of these craft being humans from the future?
Well, I guess that was when I was 8 years old.
Okay.
I had sort of what I've come to understand was a conscious precognitive moment where I looked up at Whitley Strieber's book Communion, saw that alien, you know, classic gray alien form, and visualized a picture of a chimpanzee-like early hominin form and a modern human in the middle, and then this alien form, which I put in here in the first chapter, I believe. There it is. Here. Whoa.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was that kind of started the ball rolling. Obviously, as an 8-year-old, I don't have much context as far as evolutionary anatomy and the physics of time and time travel, but it was enough to pique my curiosity, and I just dove straight down that rabbit hole.
And eventually led to this. Now, what did you study as your course of study for doctorate?
Right. So I started out in physics and astronomy.
Okay.
For obvious reasons, the craft are interesting unto themselves. But then I thought it might be better to pursue the question more in the context of the beings. So I switched to biological anthropology. My main focus of study was in human evolutionary anatomy, biomedicine. Okay. And I focused on, quite by chance, it was cool how it worked out, or, you know, worked out on purpose, I don't know. The evolution of our craniofacial anatomy, with a focus on the eye orbits, which are right in between an expanding brain and a retracting face. Yeah. So it really gave me a good ability to understand how they might be us, you know, based on these long-term evolutionary trends of increased encephalization. We have more globular neurocrania. It's expanded mediolaterally. Our faces have become reduced and retracted. And if you extend those traits forward that dominate the last 6 to 8 million years of human evolution, we're going to look like the damn aliens. You know?
Eventually, yeah. Especially if you start looking at any technologies to begin living elsewhere, even on our own planet. When you're talking about possibly heading underwater, possibly heading to deep areas of the earth, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, people say that a lot. You know, if we lived in space or if we lived underground or something. I didn't get into that in my book because there's no way of knowing.
Yeah, that's very speculative.
Yeah, but what I focus on is the dominance of these trends, regardless of where we lived on this planet, our social or political systems. Those same characteristics of our craniofacial anatomy still occurred, and they accelerated.
Yeah, you know? And they aren't going to change as we evolve.
I don't see why it would. No, and I came across an article the other day in an academic publication showing that a brain size 3 times our current size is the most efficient. So, you know, if our brains do continue to get larger, you know, we'll reach that place where we unlock further potential, I guess. And
absolutely.
They would be larger. You know, we would expect that because it is a trend that dominates the whole course of our evolution. So,
yeah. And at the point of it being future and future coming back to visit, why would they be coming back, Mike?
Well, I mean, with acknowledging my own biases regarding studying the past, that's what we do as anthropologists. You know, we're left with the fossilized skeletal remains and the dentition of our ancestors, and we can learn things from that, but not nearly as much as if we could pick up living ancestors.
Sure. And
that's seemingly what they do. They do the same thing I would do as a biological anthropologist if I had access to a time machine. So, yeah, I think part of it's research. I think they're also monitoring the environment, and there's something about our genetics that is paramount as well. That's the most ubiquitous thing, is they take sperm and egg.
Yeah, sperm, egg, blood, things like that are full-on genetic material all the way around.
Yeah, and it was interesting because I was about a month out from publishing my first book in 2019, and I came across Jim Peniston's account.
Yeah.
And he says they're time travelers. You know, he touched the craft, received the binary code. A lot of your listeners are probably familiar with that. And, in hypnotic regression, he divulged that they were having problems with reproduction, and they were coming back to get chromosomes, DNA, from past people to help with that. It was cool to see that. A very different source for a very different reason saying the same thing. So I highlighted that in my second book, The Extratempestrial Model, as an important case to consider. But I also, talked about other cases that don't neatly fit with this model because we, need to look at the whole picture. So it sort of examines other theories and how different cases might fit in different places.
Yeah, absolutely. And it very necessary to be able to look at things from, like you said, an anthropological point of view, not just experientially, but genetically, things like that. Because there have, of course, been cases of sightings going back thousands of years. And to know that these stories have been in our humanity and continue to come into our humanity really does raise that question of, are they coming back to garner some kind of information to take back to the future if that's the case?
Yeah, and we would expect people in these different times to conceptualize them differently.
Yeah.
I think it's the origin of a lot of myths, cave paintings. It probably had a lot to do with the ubiquity of cranial modification, intentional cranial modification. I think it inspired numerous religions and belief systems, origin myths. I
have actively been working on kind of an anthropological album that is going through cave drawings and rock art that specifically feature these kind of things. And whenever you look at them, there are very specific tribal patterns that are repeated all over the world. That, as a musician and audio engineer, dude, that is a sine wave.
Yeah.
That's a saw wave. That's a square wave. And I've always wondered if perhaps the people who were making this art were synesthetic and are actively drawing the sounds that they heard in the environment around them.
That's cool. I never thought about that. Makes a lot of sense, though.
It does. It makes a lot of sense for why the same tribal pattern in Australia, why the same tribal pattern in America, Why the same tribal pattern in Europe?
And you know what?
You know?
Also, in relation to that, before TV and everything else that we have to distract us from the world around us, like music, dancing, song was so integral to the cultures of traditional peoples that they didn't even have a word for it.
Yeah.
It was just a part of everyday life, art and music. So, yeah, I mean, they were probably more tapped into that than we are.
And one of the first technologies that we actively used when you're looking at things like epidaurus, when you're looking at structures like what are on Malta that when you chant in them actively resonate in theta waves, stuff like that, things that our brains actively produce to put us into dreamlike states, stuff like that. So even Stonehenge has been shown to be reflective surfaces to amplify sound.
Oh, cool.
That certain frequencies resonate more in that circle of stones than other frequencies. So
yeah, we got the what's that place outside of Palm Springs? The Integratron.
Yeah,
that's like people go there for
man. I want to go there so bad.
The sound bowl things, whatever.
You know
what really blows my mind? I don't know why this just popped in my head. If you put the speed of light into Google Earth, do you know where the speed of light is?
No.
Geographically, it's the freaking pyramids. Pyramids of Giza.
Wow. Now, I had heard the fact that the speed of light was calculated within the actual...
I mean, if you just put it in as coordinates, GPS coordinates, it drops you right at the Pyramid of Giza. How
Interesting.
crazy is that?
And I've got a hypothesis with that just because I make a lot of binaural beat music. And the whole concept behind binaural beats is the idea that one frequency goes in the left ear, one frequency goes in the right. Your brain finds the third frequency, which is the target frequency. So if you're wanting to meditate on 425 hertz, you'd put 425 or 424 here, 426 here, and your brain makes 425 with the wobble.
420 here too.
Yeah. And the idea of there being two different length, just slightly different length shafts going to the king's chamber. In the Great Pyramid with baffles that control air. It's like, I've always wondered if perhaps that is a binaural beat chamber that is actively used for the wind passing by to just the same way you can whistle in a straw and turn it into a slide whistle, adjusting the length. Put certain frequencies into that chamber to resonate the granite and put us into different states. So, all kinds of technology that we as humanity have totally forgotten about, Doctor. One of the things I bring up all the time is you would be hard-pressed to go out right now with a 6x6 plank of wood and ask somebody to hand-carve you a spiral column.
True.
That is very recently lost to our society.
Yeah, a lot of those skills.
And to think that it took aliens to build the pyramids.
Well, I don't know if I'm on board with that.
Me neither, because I think it really subtracts from the ingenuity of humanity. We had people like Archimedes and stuff like that were making automatons.
Da Vinci.
Yeah. We are an ingenious, brilliant species who can calculate and do amazing things with an abacus.
And it's not that complex, like
Not
what
really.
structure will hold up a pyramid. Bigger on the bottom, smaller on the top.
Yeah.
There's a reason that happened everywhere throughout the world at the same time.
And there's thousands of hypotheses as to why the pyramids were built, what they were used for. For me, the question comes down to, could we do it? I believe we could. We've yet to be able to fully replicate it on scale, but that doesn't mean it was impossible.
No, one thing I learned is that they used water, to make sure, because water's always flat. So they used that to make sure that the stones were perfectly flat.
And we have a researcher that comes onto our show pretty regularly, Stephen Myers out there. Hey, Stephen. From the Pharaoh's Pump Foundation. And his whole hypothesis is the fact that they actively dammed and redirected part of the water into the Giza Plateau, flooded it, and like a lock system. And so, because why would you float the bricks all the way down just to drag them across the dirt?
Just keep floating them.
Just keep floating them. And then reduce the water level or raise it as you build the structure.
That makes a lot of sense.
But to float them in, pop them in place, flood it some more, now you're up to the next level. And just wash, rinse, repeat. Build the retaining wall higher, hold more water, build the structure. It explains some of the erosion that's there on the Giza Plateau, things like the Great Sphinx, stuff like that have very clear erosion lines around them.
That's interesting.
So it's a very interesting hypothesis. But once again, the idea that we wouldn't be able to do it, I think is very insulting to us as humans. And to think once again that every one of these craft that is coming in has to be alien is once again, I think, distracting from the fact that many of them could be us from the future trying to fix a problem.
It makes the box too small.
Yeah, precisely. And
well, I also would claim that, like I said earlier, I don't think this is the only explanation either. I think that would make the box also unnecessarily small to say they're only future humans, because there's probably a lot of other things going on. And I've come to wonder if they're all these theories are part of the same thing. I gave a talk in Phoenix a couple months ago where I laid out how the crypto-terrestrial, ultra-terrestrial, even ET, interdimensional time travel, how they all could be part of the same thing if you do interject time as the common thread that runs through them.
Well, and especially the fact of, unfortunately, we put so many things in a box, Dr. Masters, that we've forgotten that we gave time its bounds.
Yeah.
We did.
We
invented that.
Yeah.
That's not a universal thing. That is specific to us here.
Yeah. It's limiting as well.
Very limiting. Very limiting. And when we look at the modern realm of physics, when we look at quantum physics as it's being studied right now, my gosh, we are learning that, yes, parallel dimensions exist. We are learning that we are much more likely to be living in a sud bowl of a universe than a single expanding bubble.
Yeah.
And those things open up a realm of possibilities to know that what we process sensory-wise as human beings is 350 nanometers of an entire spectrum.
Yeah, that's
350 nanometers, and we're learning to shift those things right now. I mean, just in the last 2 years, we have created matter from light. Like, you may as well say, replicator, make me a coffee.
Yeah.
Like, we have made amazing progress in science and technology just in the last few years that is remarkable.
Yeah, it is. And fast forward that.
Yeah.
What's the future going to look like?
Yeah, precisely. One of the videos that we show regularly on the show is the actual branded Skunkworks video of their nuclear department, showing this gentleman who's probably about in his early 30s in front of a nuclear reactor about the size of a walk-in freezer in a restaurant in his lab.
That's crazy.
And he's talking about this reactor and this technology and how, we can 3-4 generation this every year. When I'm done with this project and this reactor is to the size that we need it to be, I'll have to find a new job. That's how fast and rapid this will be. That was released in 2012, and just this last year, Lockheed Martin released their patent for a nuclear reactor that fits inside of an F-16. So
he was right. He's out of a job now.
Yep. Opens up a whole new realm of technology and possibilities when people are like, well, to do that and to warp light, you'd need the power of a nuclear reactor. It's like, well, we got it.
There you go.
And it's very portable.
It fits in your pocket.
It's very portable.
Yeah.
So imagine where it will be 30, 40, 50 years from now. Look at where we've come.
Yeah, totally.
Just in 30, 40, 50 years. I'm 48. I remember going to look things up on microfiche and finding out it was not in my library.
Same.
Now we don't have to go anywhere further than our phone.
Nobody even has
to find all of it.
Encyclopedias anymore.
I know.
I spent a lot of time with our encyclopedia.
I had
catalog.
Numerous encyclopedia sets as a kid, and I lived in them.
Google it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Which is great, especially as an author.
It's fantastic.
Or recording audiobooks. Like, I need to know how to pronounce a word.
Yeah.
Just Google it.
Exactly. And I mean, all of that came from researchers, came from people like Caltech saying, we need to talk to MIT now. We need to be able to real-time share data. That is where all of that came.
I think Al Gore did it,
yeah, of course. He was the genius behind it.
Everybody claims to have invented the internet. Have you noticed that?
Yes.
There's like at least 20 people that claim they invented the internet.
But in all reality,
I want to go on record right now saying it was me, actually.
It was you?
I invented the internet.
Well, I could believe that, especially if you have access to time travel.
Right, that's true.
But in all sincerity, looking at the concept of time travel, looking at the science behind time travel, how likely are we, Dr. Masters?
Very.
Very.
Yeah. I cite a couple literary reviews, research articles, Ehrman et al., where he did a vast review of all pro and con theories about backward time travel and found that there's nothing in the laws of physics that prohibits it. So like you're saying, if nothing does, you know, with the speed at which we're learning and doing and creating, we're bound to figure it out. So I would say 100% probability. Yeah,
precisely. And that brings up just a panoply, a slew of questions about probability and new universes, new realities, branches, all kinds of things. And
information, transmission.
And where we're living amongst all of that. Because if they did go back, did that change the reality around us? Did that bring us to a new reality that we aren't even aware of yet?
Yeah, I mean, I think even just being aware of their presence in our times forces change. You know, like I was talking about religions and belief systems, like just even observing them is like, whoa, there's something else going on in this reality, you know, and then you have to ask questions, and that's why we're all here.
Exactly.
You know, is to try to figure out what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then is there any direct transmission of information? And then, yeah, you got to ask more questions about how that impacted our species, in what way, where.
Through your research, have you found any direct transmission of information? Have you found any stories of people communicating with folks from the future?
Tons.
Things like that?
Tons.
Give us a couple of examples if you can.
Well, I mean, that's the second book, really, is, you know, people that interact with these extraterrestrials, as I call them, these visitors, these others. And, yeah, there's obviously the common element. I talked about this in my lecture yesterday of take care of the earth, take care of the earth. You know, a lot of people are shown images of missiles, war, nuclear war especially, environmental calamities. So, yeah, that's direct communication of information that is either a warning about something that's going to happen or some attempt at trying to avoid it. Yeah. And I talk about how that could be interpreted in the context of the block universe versus the multi-world, you know, many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, and how, you know, it might play in with each of those, if it's an avoidance thing or a warning about something that's bound to happen, because if they are from our future, they already know what's going to happen.
Can they warn us? Or is it the Doc Brown situation of don't open this letter, tear it up?
That's the thing, is if it's in block universe model, then they can't change anything.
Yeah.
But if they had always warned us and we do avert something and they always warn us and we always avert it, there is no change. You know, it's just a self-consistent situation of a future cause and a past effect, you know, which is, it happens all the time.
Sure.
With time travel. There is no differentiation. According to Igor Novikov, there's no differentiation between past, present, and future in the context of a time machine. You can have a future cause and a past effect, but because of our brains that limit our perception of time and force it into a linear situation, because we have to understand the world we live in, we evolved to live in this world. It challenges our notions of causality, but there is no paradox.
Yeah,
That's
precisely.
what a lot of people don't understand. I hear this all the time. It's like, well, we can't go back in time because then there's paradox. I'm like, well, there's not. If you know, in the block universe model, everything's consistent. You just go back in time and do the thing you had always done, and that already exists before you ever go to do it. You know, because it's in your past, relatively. But then as you live those moments and going to the past, you're just enacting the thing that you'd always done. It doesn't change anything.
Yeah. And God, man, once again, just a panoply of questions and ideas start swarming through my head when I think about those things, because I recently went to the Remote Viewing Association conference, and I loved that. That was in Charlottesville, Virginia this year, right near the Monroe Institute.
That's cool. I had a buddy that went last year.
I was there last year. Yeah, it was in Menlo Park last year for their 50th anniversary right near.
You know Greg Bishop?
Yes, I do.
That was Greg.
Yes, I do.
He stopped. I was at Esalen.
Too cool.
And he stopped at Esalen just to say hi, but he was on his way up there.
Yeah. No, I know Greg. We are connected via social media, things like that. Great, fantastic guy. And when you're talking about past, present, future, all at the same time, the first thing that pops into my head is non-local intelligence, non-local consciousness, and the ideas that were put forth by Hal Puthoff, Russell Targ so many years ago, and the ideas of remote viewing and the fact of we are all interconnected. You know, even the concept that just won the Nobel Prize this last year of quantum entanglement, the idea that particles can influence each other despite distance.
Yeah, faster than light even.
And exactly. And the idea that means we could influence particles in the future. That means we could influence particles in the past, and kind of how the whole precognition thing happens. I say it all the time, that field has more people with letters and commas behind their name, and it is wild to see some of their research into precognition.
Well, speaking
things
of,
like that.
Actually, to bring the two together,
please.
Eric Wargo wrote a book called Time Loops, argues that there's a good chance that remote viewing is just precognition because they need that final target. You know, they don't want to work without it. And how much are they just conveying that target back to their prior self?
Yeah.
You know, and then they just know that information before they have access to it. Another thing related to that, which is kind of crazy, Joe McMoneagle in his book, The Human Time Machine, which I read a week after my second book came out. I would have loved to have put this in there. Toward the end, like page 127 or something, he, is talking about remote viewing the future. That's what the whole book's about.
Yep.
And says by the mid 21st century, so this century, we will come to understand that UFOs are, for lack of a better word, time machines.
Yes.
I was like, damn.
Yeah.
Joe McMoneagle just said that he remote viewed the future and UFOs are time machines. I was like, well, that's cool.
Yeah. And that was a very bold proclamation when it came out. I remember,
right.
Still is.
You know, he's probably right. I don't think it's going to be that long before we know that.
I don't think it will be either. You know, especially with a lot of the talk in Congress, things like that, trying to find the roots of programs, trying to track down the money line and what special access projects it went to. I think we will have an answer on things in pretty short order as far as the timeline of
seems like it
when this problem and quandary really started for us.
Yeah, I mean, John Ramirez is saying 2027, and Lou Elizondo said something like that. That's right around the corner. I had
Steve Bassett on all of a month or so ago. He said by the end of summer we would have a big disclosure moment. That would be incredible. Yeah. So I'm watching the fashions to see when people stop wearing white, and it's the official end of summer. That's when I'll start looking.
Don't get your hopes up. A lot of people have been saying stuff.
I'm not holding my breath, believe me.
Yeah.
But it would be exciting, and it is an exciting time.
It already is exciting.
Exactly.
I mean, this is potentially one of the coolest times to be alive.
It is. You know? It is one of the coolest times to be alive. I love it. I love research like this. Thank you so much for coming on, taking the time to talk about this deep topic. I'd love to have you on a longer episode where we can really dig into things, because this is such a rabbit hole of a concept and such a theoretical side of things that really makes so much sense. It makes so much sense when you start looking at stuff.
Yeah, that's pretty logical. It's got the fewest assumptions, principle of parsimony, Occam's razor type things. So.
Exactly. Well, let everybody know, Dr. Masters, where they can go to get your books, where they can go to follow your work, where they can go to find out more.
Well, I mean, I got a website. It's kind of a hub for all of those things you just mentioned. It's just my name, michaelpmasters.com.
Okay.
I should probably know my own URL, huh?
You should. It helps the shameless self-promotion.
Yeah, it does. This is how often I shameless self-promote. I don't even know my own damn website. No, I think it's michaelpmasters.com, but if that doesn't work, just Google it.
Well, and, folks, if you can't find that, you can always find curiousrealm.com/store. That is where we carry all of the books and materials from all of our guests. We will make sure to add these into the store over the next week so that people have easy, quick access to it. Thank you so much for this amazing realm of research and fantastic, beautifully refreshing view on this topic, because I think we have far too labored the singular point of these phenomena, and to open the concept up, to open the research up, is going to be a huge step forward. It's going to be fantastic.
It's already happened. I mean, Grush ain't using the word extraterrestrial.
Nope. Exactly. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Masters.
Yeah, great talking to you.
Absolutely, same. While you are online checking out all of the work from Dr. Michael P. Masters, everybody make sure to stop on by Curious Realm. CuriousRealm.com is where you can find all of the episodes. That's where you can find our guest books in the store. That's where you can like, follow, subscribe, come and check out our YouTube channel, all that kind of stuff. Thank you so much for everybody for tuning in. Stay tuned through commercial break. We will be right back with our continuing coverage of MUFON Symposium 2023 from Covington, Kentucky, right after this.
Bye.